guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jessica Flynn and I am the owner and maker of Flynn Sisters Boutique. And today we are getting real, obviously. I want to show you guys my real epoxy processes. This is the process I use every single day in and day out. I'm working on my cups for my business. So I'm going to be showing you guys real and practical techniques that I use for applying epoxy to my tumblers. And I would like to preface this video by saying that the views and opinions that I express in this video are built on 2 years of experience with using Alumilite epoxy. I don't claim this to be the perfect way or the absolute right way or anything else like that. I really just want to show you guys what I do every single day in my real business, in my real work area here, in my real clothes, using my real equipment. And hopefully you guys can walk away with some real and practical tips that you can apply with your own business or your own hobby in working with the cups. So we're gonna get started. We wanna make sure that we suit up for the job. Epoxy resin is very dangerous to your health. Really should use personal protection equipment and do this in an open, well-ventilated area. Whether you're working with spray paint, acetone, epoxy resin, you should always be using an organic respirator, organic vapor respirator mask. I have a mask in my Amazon store that is comparable to the one that I have, and I will link that in the description box. You also want to make sure that you maintain your filters. So I change my filters once a month or more, depending on how much work I'm doing. And even when you are sanding epoxy, you need to be wearing an organic vapor respirator. Super important. Also, we're wearing clothes that we don't care about. When we're done working, we take these off and put them straight into the wash machine. I have a collection of clothing that I use just for working with epoxy. It's also a good idea if you are sensitive, or if you're messy, you may want to wear a suit, like a protective little suit. I also have a link to that in my Amazon shop. I will put that in the description box. And we're also going to be using nitrile gloves, also in my Amazon shop, which I will link. So you need to be wearing gloves, you need to have protective clothing on, put your hair up, put your mask on. It's a good idea to wear eye protection if you don't have a full face mask. Be safe. I cannot stress this enough. Even if you've been working with epoxy for a while and you don't notice any reactions, it doesn't mean it's not still affecting your body. So it's very important that you protect yourself when you're working with these chemicals. All right, so to start off, we're going to measure our epoxy. I like to do this in a clear plastic cup, and I measure out the amount of epoxy I want with water first. And I keep my epoxy in these little squirt tubes. And you've got part B here, part A is in the other one. And I keep the little squirt tubes in these like little plastic bins, just so they don't make a mess. So for this video, I'm going to be using 1/3 cup of epoxy resin for each part. So in total, I'm mixing up 2/3 of a cup of epoxy resin. And I ran out of part A in my little squeeze bottle, so I have to use the gallon to measure, whatever. So we're just pouring out equal parts, and then I mix with a butter spreader. This is just a stainless steel butter spreader. And then I mix really slowly for about 20 to 30 minutes, scraping the sides as I go. It probably wouldn't take so long if you didn't have such a large load, but anyway, you're just going to mix until you have no streaks and it's totally clear. You are going to see a good amount of bubbles, but that's okay. You just want to let it sit for about 2 to 3 minutes. Most of those bubbles will rise to the surface and the epoxy will be slightly warm to the touch. You just clean off your butter spreader with a coffee filter and rubbing alcohol. So it's super important when you're working around epoxy for the cups that you do not use paper towels in your workroom or anywhere around the cups. In my garage and where I do design work's okay, but I don't like to have it in the area I do epoxy. All right, so these are the cups that we're going to be working with today. These are all in different phases. Some in the final phase of epoxy layering, some of them are kind of in the middle, and some are just freshly glittered last night using the epoxy method and glitter. So I'm just spreading this on. This particular cup is in its final coat. When I run final coats, I'm just super, super careful that I have no debris on the cup. There's no debris on my gloves, and there's no debris on that pool noodle on my arm that I could be transferring onto the cup while I'm applying the epoxy. If you have problems with debris getting on your cups, it's most likely caused by debris in the cups you're mixing with, your tools, your gloves, or what you're using to clean your cups off with prior to you epoxying them. It's really unlikely that there's debris in the air that's getting onto your cups. I figured out after getting so frustrated with so many cups having these little bumpies, I realized that it's either A, paper towels, it's B, debris that I had on my tools or my hands, or C, some kind of debris that was left on the cup before I started epoxying. So you really need to be hyper aware of that stuff because it just adds time and more work for you later on. So I also spread epoxy with pretty thin coats. I'm never doing a large flood coat or anything crazy like that. The reason I like thin coats of epoxy is because in the end, while it may take longer or it's a little bit more work, I find it's actually less work for me in the end because if I'm always trying to pour huge coats on my cups, I can't tell you how many times I ended up with like a muffin top or a bulge in the cup or an area with lots of micro bubbles. The thinner the coat, the clearer the coat, and the better your shape overall will be in the end. That's just my personal opinion and my experience. That's how I do all my cups is I just run pretty thin coats. Even for an initial coat over glitter, I'm not putting on a whole lot. Because if you have a ton of epoxy on there, if you have any kind of imbalance in your cup, in the arm that's going into your cup or on your turner, you're going to end up with a huge bulge, and that is really hard. I can always add more epoxy later through more coats. I can't always take away. That's a lot of sanding and a lot of work that I just don't care to do. So to me, it's easier just to run thinner coats each time. If you notice you have any loose glitter or debris on your glove in between cups or whatever, just take it off and put on a new glove. I know it seems wasteful, but that's just kind of how I do it. You'll also want to be mindful at the order in which you're doing your batch of cups. So you're going to want to start with final coats first, mid coats or like secondary coats next, and then coats over your raw glitter last, starting with your darkest color glitter and moving on to your lightest color glitter. This way you're not wasting a lot of gloves, having to change between gloves each time if you have stray glitter left on the glove or whatever. In this part of the video, I was actually trying to fix a part where some loose glitter got over to where it wasn't supposed to be because I neglected to spray seal my glitter first. If you're making split cups, definitely want to seal your glitter, and I forgot. So anyway, I'm getting on a new pair of gloves because I did get some red glitter on there. I'm moving on to a cup that's getting its secondary coat. This is the coat that I put on before I sand. So It had raw epoxy method glitter, then one coat, then this coat, and then what I'll do next is sand after this and do, you know, decals or whatever kind of design work I'm doing on that. Okay, so after I spread the epoxy on, I just screw them onto my turner. In my workroom, I really like this setup. I've got a rack that I keep the cups up on, and the arms that I use for my cups just kind of slide right onto these dowels that stick out of that rack. And the reason I like to use the rack is it keeps my cups off of any kind of surface that may deposit debris onto them. So from start to finish, I will never let the cup touch a table or anything else really. They're always stood upside down on the rack or they're on the turner, and I never touch them with my bare hands, except like of course if I'm like applying a decal or something, but you get what I'm saying. Alright, so when I'm spreading epoxy over raw glitter, I want to do a little thicker of a ribbon of epoxy going on, and then I just kind of spread it out. When I do my first coats, again, I do a thinner coat over raw glitter, I think, than most people, which a lot of people don't like because they don't want their glitter to move. My glitter is not really moving, especially if I sealed it and I used epoxy method. It's on there pretty good. But I don't want to do too thick of a coat. I just do not like thick coats, especially over raw glitter. You're going to get a lot of bubbles rising to the surface over raw glitter, so the thicker the coat, the harder it is for those bubbles to escape. Alright, so I'm just scooping out every bit that I can. And if you guys notice, that 2/3 of a cup of epoxy that I mixed, it coated 2 cups that were just freshly glittered, 1 cup that was half glittered, and then I think 3 other ones that were just getting secondary or final coats. So I'm not using a whole lot of epoxy. Just cleaning up my little mess here that I kept contained on a piece of parchment paper. The cups are all happy and rolling. And then I'm going to hit them really quickly with my heat gun. I don't use a torch with Alumilite. It's not necessary. Also not necessary with thin coats, because the thinner the coat, the thinner the epoxy, the easier it is for those bubbles to escape. So just a little bit of heat is all I really need, if that. Sometimes I won't even use heat. Also too, guys, the less bubbles in your mixing cup, the less bubbles on your actual cup. So if you mix slow and you mix right, you really shouldn't have a lot of micro bubbles and stuff on the cup. Alright, and so then I just clean my hands up. Any like residue I might have gotten on my hands, I like to clean off with rubbing alcohol and a coffee filter. Again, no paper towels. Even when I'm cleaning my hands off around the cups, I'm still using coffee filters. And that is about it. So these will roll for about 6 to 8 hours, and then they'll be on to the next step. Alright guys, so that concludes our video today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you're loving our channel, hit subscribe, hit that bell button so you don't miss any new videos. We do upload every Wednesday and Saturday, God willing. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section. I am very active down there, so I'm happy to help you wherever I can. All the products used in this video, all the equipment used in this video will be linked in the description box. So if you want to know where you can get a mask, any kind of personal protection equipment, epoxy tools, etc., I'm all going to put them down there. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.